Hello, everyone. What is going on? Very pleased to be doing this show tonight. This is Unfound Live for March 9th of 2026. I hope all of you had a great week since we all got together this time last week. Of course, last week it was off by an hour because I'm hoping everybody remembered to put their clocks forward on Saturday night / Sunday morning. If you didn't, I'm sure Sunday was a very interesting day for you. It's weird. So many of the devices we have today, of course, automatically update, like our phones, our TVs, a lot of car clocks, not all car clocks. So many devices do, but there are still devices that don't. Like, for example, the clock in my car does not. In fact, the clock in my Sonata, yes, I'm still driving my Sonata. We'll talk about the car situation here in a moment. The clock in my Hyundai Sonata, which is a 2016 Sonata, sucks. It does not. I don't know. It runs slow. It's like a minute for that clock is like 60.1 seconds or something, and gradually it just gets off by like a minute, then 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, and I have to update it. I'll be looking at my phone, and my phone will say 6 o'clock, and I'll look at the car, and it says 5:57. I don't know. But so that's weird. And then, for example, my microwave, I don't know how old this microwave is that I have in this condo here. Remember, most of the stuff in here is not mine. I still had to manually update that, but like your cable boxes and things, they all update. We're so spoiled. Of course, back in the day, like 1980s, everything had to be manually updated, your VCRs and all those things. And then the clocks we have down in the gym where I live here, they're manual. They actually have the dials and everything. I actually, because I'm a geek like that, I changed those clocks myself. Got like the bench that you lie on, maybe to do certain exercises. Brought the bench over to each of the clocks. Yes, there's 2 in there. And, put them forward an hour. I'm the geek to do that. So I think I did that yesterday, as a matter of fact. So I hope everybody remembered that it's not so bad. When you turn the clocks forward or back, then I guess you don't miss anything. But if you turn the clocks forward, you do have the potential to really throw things off. And I can remember a few, when I was a churchgoer, go back to the 1980s with my parents, that we missed church a few times because we didn't put the clock forward. I do remember that. So there you go. But it's good to see all of you. Please, as you are watching tonight, don't be afraid to put a little comment, talk amongst yourselves over there in the chat. While you are also watching, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. You can support Unfound through a variety of ways: Patreon, PayPal, and right here on YouTube. I have a very interesting, as is usually the case, it's always interesting here on Monday nights. I have a very interesting lineup of topics for tonight. I'm going to talk about the disappearance of Robert Harrod, who went missing from Placentia, California back in 2009. I think the reason that this disappearance caught my eye is because, his disappearance I can relate, given that I have a father who's in his 80s and Robert was in his 80s. He knew was known as Bob. Kind of reminded of thoughts that have gone through, regarding my own father the last few years, being that he lives by himself and everything. And this is a disappearance where we really, really, really have to consider the idea that there was foul play. So as I've usually done, I will take a look at what is the popular theory or the rundown of the timeline and everything for Robert's disappearance, using the Charlie Project. And I have actually, while I was on the treadmill today, I actually listened to a couple of podcast coverages of his disappearance. And then, I'll have my questions, things that are still really in my mind after doing a fair amount of reading about it. And then I will do my analysis, and I will give my best shot at predicting what happened to Robert Harrod. And we'll see if one of these days that actually happens. Also, there's this Air Force disappearance. Some guy in the Air Force who was somehow involved in the UFO investigation and everything. He's gone missing. As you can imagine, the kooks out there are getting all crazy about this. I, of course, will bring everybody back down to earth. Forgive the pun. Going to take a look at that man's disappearance. And, of course, being that Nancy Guthrie is still missing, I am going to talk about that. And the main focus there is it does seem, weirdly enough, that the discussion is slowly coming back to where my idea has been the whole time. Funny how that works. And then I have some other things that I need to get to before we are done tonight. Hopefully I will have time. So once again, give a thumbs up, subscribe, do all of that while you are watching / listening tonight. Hello, Ashley. Good to see you. Got in about a half hour early. Look at you. Hello, D. What's going on, D? Amy, Glenn always says hello from Michigan. Good to see you. I was on the elevator in my condo building yesterday, Glenn, with a guy from Michigan up from the Upper Peninsula. Charlie, what's going on? Good to see you, nephew Charlie. I know one of your sons had a birthday. Your mother sent me a picture of your older son, and the kid was looking like a pimp in that picture. Good for him, turning 18. And Lisa's birthday is today. Oh, my goodness. Lisa, you're 29 today. Look at you. Happy birthday, Lisa. Everybody's saying happy birthday. Hello, Lisa. Hello, D again. Kathleen, all the way from Largo. Kathleen, right here in Largo, Florida. Largo, Florida. Kathleen, is that right? Okay, interesting. Just to the, I guess, a little bit to the southeast of me, but only by like 15 minutes. Hello, Kathleen. I guess that's where you are. Yes. All right, Kathleen. I'm right over here near Sand Key. Good to see you. Wasn't it a beautiful day out today? It was amazing. Amanda, this is the first time I've been able to watch. I'm working, so I'll be on and off. All right, Amanda, good to see you. Thank you for tuning in for your first live. All right, D, thanks. You're welcome, Lisa. Yeah, everybody's saying happy birthday to Lisa. Okay. And Lisa has had a difficult week, but I think everything is going to end up being fine in Lisa's world. She and I have been talking about that through Messenger. So what has gone on with me since we all got together? Well, like I already stated, no car yet. Not for lack of trying, although I will admit I took a few days off because it wears you out. I'm here to tell you, looking through cars and emailing and looking them over and doing Carfaxes and everything else. I have put way more money into finding a car, more than I ever could have imagined. I've put more money into finding a car than all the money I put into all the other cars that I've bought in my life. It's not even close, because I'm looking for something particular, and most of them are not around this area. But the good and bad is that the good news is that tomorrow there's going to be Independent Tech is going to take a look at a car in South Carolina tomorrow. That's the good news. And so it seems to be a really nice car, low miles. It's a 2012 Mustang GT 6-speed. The bad news is that I think this seller also has somebody else coming to look at the car tomorrow. So there's that. So it very well may be, if the inspection goes well tomorrow and this other buyer isn't interested or doesn't show up or whatever else, I may be, this may be the one, or it could go the other direction and the inspection doesn't go well, or this other person decides to buy the car, yada, yada, yada. So we'll just have to see. But, and I have a couple other prospects, but this car, you don't find too many with low miles, and I don't think it's been raced or anything. So those are all pluses. But we'll just have to see. So tomorrow is a car day, and we will see what happens. And I've already, of course, it's in South Carolina, so I can, if it goes through, then I can drive to get it. I think my brother Brian will be more than happy. We'll take a road trip up there to pick it up. But that seems to be a long way off right now. But it's nice. It's candy apple red Mustang GT. Not the biggest fan of the rims that are on it, even though they are factory from that year. In fact, they were an upgraded rim, they're a little too docile for me. So maybe that'll be something that I will have to change. One of the first things, maybe. But the rest of the car looks good, and I don't think it's been abused or anything. But like I said, from a looks point of view, it all looks good. But the rims are just a little, what I might call, conservative for a Mustang. They look more like they should be on like a luxury car. Even once again, they're factory rims. They're from 2012. They're Ford rims. They just look like they should be on a, I don't know, a Mercedes or something like that. I don't even know. Or a Lincoln, if you want to stick to the Ford company, like on a Lincoln or something. So I don't. What designer picked those rims? I have no idea. But otherwise, like I said, I'm hoping because I'm a little worn out looking for one. And I have thought, the money I've put into trying to find cars and sending texts to look at cars and everything, I could have maybe been well on my way to fixing the engine on my Sonata. Don't think that hasn't crossed my mind. So there's that. So I'll let you know. But so no movement there. And in fact, once again, I continue to joke with my trivia people. Did you hear me pull in tonight? And they'll say, no. And I said, yeah, the reason is I'm still driving my Sonata. Speaking of trivia, my Saturday team, we won. In fact, we won quite convincingly. And it was a win that I did not suspect. We missed a couple questions we should have gotten, and we still won by 10 points. And I think it all had to do with the halftime question, which had to do with a famous actor, and there was a list of movies. I guess a lot of teams missed that. And we got it eventually. We didn't get full points. But there must have been quite a few teams that took zeros or very low numbers on that particular question. Because I was pretty convinced going to the final question, the final that, we might be in like 4th or 5th place. We ended up being in first place by like 10 points or something. it was a little surprising. And then we got the final question. And so I guess it all worked out in the end. But I think on a more competitive night, given that we missed a couple questions we shouldn't, we could have easily not won and maybe even finished third or fourth or fifth. So it was a nice night. Some of you follow me on Facebook. You even saw the picture of me with my fellow teammates and me with the number 1 sign on that. Also, my team last Wednesday, did we get the final question? We didn't, but not a lot of teams did anyway. And we are right on the edge. This is the last week of the season coming up, and we're in 6th place. You have to be in the top 5 to make the playoffs. We're kind of right in the same situation we were last season, in 6th place, going to the last week of the season. As I've stated in past live shows, we just made a couple mistakes. We can't take zeros. And some bad decisions on final questions there. We could have been smarter there. And had we been, we would have been in like 2nd place. Instead, we're in 6th. It's just such a fine line. But we're playing well. We're certainly one of the smarter, more knowledgeable teams there. I just think that our final question decision-making has hurt us. It's not our smarts. Plenty of smarts. Our game theory is what is not good. So there's that. And then as far as me working out and my weight and everything, I woke up at 171 pounds the past 2 days. I have not been this light since before I moved to Florida. So that's over 15 years ago. It's crazy. And I look good. It's not that I've just lost weight either. You know, I can see, man, I've really slimmed down. In fact, my brother, Brian, when we went to the Styx concert, even said to me, man, Ed, I really can tell now that I'm looking at you, man, I really can tell. And it's certainly true. And I've been lifting weights at the same time. So it's all kind of coming together right now. But I still need to lose a few pounds. Still. I need to be 168, 167. And that will put me back to about the weight where I was when I worked at Star Trek over 20 years ago. It's crazy. It really is crazy. But I will continue to insist. It hasn't been that difficult. I went into the gym today, got my 7,500 steps in, which it means I walk at about a 3.8 mile pace, 3.8 miles per hour, just walking. And I do that at a 2.5 angle of incline. And that gets me about my 7,500 steps. And I've been doing that. You know, I haven't missed a day in a while. And then I also did my weights. I walk every day. I do the different weight workout every other day. So today was a weight workout. So when I just walk, it's just an hour. But when I'm down there with the weights, it ends up being like an hour and 45 minutes, if not getting close to 2 hours. So I have to budget the time. But so far, I've been getting it done. And certainly there have been results. So what is everybody? Everybody's still saying happy birthday to Lisa. That's nice. DC, you did not need to know what a javelina was. Not this week. Not on Saturday, D, but you never know one of these days. And trust me, D, when that question comes up and we get it right or I get it right, I'm going to give you all the credit. All right. So be prepared for that. And I'll thank you for that. No problem. Amanda, congratulations on the weight loss. It isn't easy. I took the easy way, used the weight loss shot to help with my appetite. Now got to start working out. Yeah, no Wegovy or Ozempic or anything for me. Zero. It's been getting rid of sugar in my diet. I wouldn't say I've been 100% on that, but it's been a drastic drop in sugar intake. Hello, Charlotte. What's going on? Good to see you tonight. And But sugar is not my problem. I know I've said this before. Sugar is not my problem. If you tell me, you know what, Ed, you can't drink soda anymore, it's really not that big of a deal. If I can't have cake or anymore or those things, it's, there are certain things that I like, but I'm not a huge ice cream guy. I'm not a huge cake guy. I like dark chocolate. I like paydays, of course, or peanuts, but they have a bunch of sugar and everything. That's not really the issue. The issue for me is the crackers and potato chips and pretzels and Cheez-Its. Those are the things that get me in trouble. I have instead of a sweet tooth, I have a salt tooth. And refined, what do they call that? Refined flour or whatever. I have a refined flour tooth for me. That's where I load up. I go to a party or anything. It's the potato chips and those things. So I've fought that off by, I got my own hot air popcorn popper. And so I pop it. I get just the little, seeds, and they pop up. It's air. And I put a little olive oil at the bottom of the bowl. And then I put a little olive oil on top of the popcorn when it's done. And then you put your salt on it. And that's how the salt sticks to air popcorn, if you never have tried that. And that has really worked out good. That has really, really solved my salt tooth issue for sure. And then eating Triscuits with pico de gallo has really helped that as well. That's become my new thing instead of potato chips and everything. That has really helped as well. But I can still get a little crazy on that. Hello, Michelle. What's going on? Good to see you. But it's gone well. It's gone easier than I thought it would go. And just as it's getting warm here in Florida, maybe I might even go out to the beach once this summer. Maybe. D, well, I don't like sugar other than my soda, and I can't do the sugar-free anything. Yeah, sugar-free stuff is nasty. Like Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, that stuff is all nasty. I can drink regular soda, but like I said, I have no problem staying away from it. And I like it. I'll admit, I like Mountain Dew and all that stuff, but I have no problem staying away from it. But Diet Coke and everything, that stuff is nasty. Nasty, nasty, nasty. So, yeah, if you were to come over to my place right now and look at my refrigerator or whatever, you'd be like, wow, no fun food in this place. You're right. All right, so let's get to, is there anything else privately that I need to talk about? It didn't go into any concerts. I don't know. I think that's probably about. Singing is going well. I had a good singing. I continue to do that. By the way, my singing lessons are on Fridays, just like when the podcasts come out. So, but that's been going well, slowly but surely. It's easier to lose weight, I'm finding, than become a good singer. So, if you were wondering. All right, let's get to tonight's topics. And I will start here, although it's not on the list. I really had a good talk with, I've told you that I will be appearing at Middle Tennessee State University in May. That is absolutely happening. In fact, it's almost exactly 2 months away now. I'm guessing that it will get here pretty fast. But I had we must have talked for an hour today. The woman who is putting it all together, her name is Sheila. We had a great talk today. Never spoke to her. Well, through email, yes. Really don't know her, but that was our first phone conversation, and it went really, really well. She didn't know a ton about me. So I had to explain some things. I was recommended to her through John Lorden. That's how I got involved in this convention that's called Private Icon. It really has nothing to do with private eyes. That's just the name of it. That will be there on the campus of Middle Tennessee State in May. John was very gracious in recommending me to her. So we talked today, and she was not, and once again, nobody is required to know anything about my background or anything, but she didn't know about the whole Steve Pankey stuff, Janelle Matthews stuff. So I was telling her about that. And we both talked about how we got into true crime. And of course, all of you know my story with In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and all of that. It was a really, really good conversation. And the interesting thing is her last name, and I'm not going to get into that, but her last name just happens to be the last name of a very, very well-known disc golf player. And you know about my following a disc golf, playing it, watching the tournaments and everything. Her last name is the same as this particular player's, and I was wondering, are you related to him? She had never heard of the guy before, and it's her married last name, but she said she was going to look into that. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I guess anytime that I can put disc golf into a conversation, I don't pass that up. But so we had a really good talk. I'm really looking forward to this, even though you know that for the last 10 years, I've avoided anything like that for a variety of reasons. And I explained those reasons to her today. In fact, I think I even did that maybe in one of the previous emails I sent her. But it's just a couple days. I think I'm going to be flying in there on Friday. And there's some things that go on Friday evening. And then it's all day stuff on Saturday. And then I think half day on Sunday. And then I fly back to here on Sunday evening. I'll be flying out of Tampa. So and where I'm staying over there, I don't even know. But so it's going to be a whirlwind tour. I have not been to Nashville. I guess this is where it is. It's in Nashville, Tennessee State, Middle Tennessee State's in Nashville. I've not actually been there. I drove through there when I was going to the disc golf tournament up in Illinois when I stayed with my buddy Dave up there. I went through Nashville driving through, but I've never actually been to the city and hung out or anything. So I'm sure, John Lorden's going to be there. And I'm guessing, I really don't know. I think a couple like national people, like national TV people are going to be there. But as far as other podcasters, YouTubers, really no names came up today, except for John's, because John's kind of helping her with this. So, yeah, and I guess it's open to the public. So if you live in the area, Tennessee, what states are around Tennessee? I'm horrible. Arkansas, Kentucky, all of those, Ohio, Indiana, I guess would be close as well. Illinois, maybe. Think about stopping down. I don't know what it costs. I've not looked any of that stuff up, to be honest, but it's called Private Icon. So it's private. And then the second word is EYECON. You can look it up, and maybe you will run into me there. I know that they do have like some parties planned and movie night, or maybe Friday night, Saturday night, and stuff. So, there you go. So if you want to check it out, I'm telling you about it. We had a great conversation today, and it's going to be 2 months. Like I said, I'm sure that's going to get here in no time. I mean, just thinking back to the middle of January, I mean, we were in the middle of the NFL playoffs. It seems like it was yesterday. It's going to get here very fast. So there you go. Doing my publicity on that. Moving on, Molly Miller and Colt Haynes. Dee and I talked about that last Thursday night on her channel on YouTube, her live show. No new news that I've gotten since then. I think we just have to continue to believe that the it is Molly and Colt, and I, went over that last week. Nothing has changed in the last week to change my attitude toward any of it. I'm still have questions about, were they found together? How far apart? Were they found near the car? Those things are all still very relevant to the discussion. And when more information comes out, I will devote more time in analyzing, I don't know how deep the analysis is going to have to go. Obviously, if we find out that there are some weird things going on, let's say they're separated by a mile or something, or we find out that they do have signs of violence on them, obviously that could go in a lot of directions. We'll just have to see. And when I get any new information, I will talk about it right here on this live show. But on the other hand, you should know that also in Oklahoma, there seems to be another search being done for Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. I know maybe the names ring bells, but maybe the entire circumstances do not. Of course, these are the two girls who went missing back in 1999, right there. What was on New Year's Eve? And Ashley Freeman's, their parents' trailer was burned to the ground. Her parents were eventually found, shot, one of them with a shotgun. They were found deceased in the burned out trailer. The girls go missing. And finally, at least one of the guys who did this is still alive, and he went to jail and everything. But Ashley and Laura are still missing. There's actually some searches being done right now in Oklahoma. Of course, searches have been done before, even before, it was really known what exactly happened that night. I don't know. What has spurred this on? Could it be some new tip? It's probably, but we also know that tips that come out, what has now been 27 years later, or 26, 27 years later, I don't know. My impression has been the last several years that the police and whoever else, it's kind of just hit and miss. It's, just going out there and just taking a shot somewhere. It's like, hoping to get lucky. We'll go down into a well, or we'll look here, we'll look there, and maybe we'll run into some evidence. I just don't know if anything at this point could be so solid as to say, oh yeah, this makes sense, or it seems likely, we got to follow this. It seemed at this point it would be, well, let's try this, let's try that, and see if we happen upon something. But it's going on. I've seen the report. Just was in my Facebook feed or something, and pictures of police cars being somewhere out in the Welch, Oklahoma area. And just like with Molly and Colt, if there's anything to report that's new, I'll let you know. But I would not get your hopes up regarding that. If you wanted to compare these two disappearances, if only because they're both in Oklahoma and they both involve two people instead of one person, I would have easily said that the odds of finding Molly and Colt somewhere out there, that would be way more likely than finding Ashley and Laura. But that's, of course, my insight on, comparing their disappearances. I think people who were really got into some of these theories that Molly and Colt were seen far away after that, then they might have looked at comparing these two groups of disappearances, in different ways than I would ever. But my impression of both of those disappearances, Molly and Colt's, much more likely to be resolved than Laura's and Ashley's. And I guess that is how it's going to end up now, being that Molly and Colt's remains have been found and Laura and Ashley's are still missing. D said, or if they were buried, yeah, they could have been buried. Yeah. Laura and Ashley, I guess you could pick a variety of ways that they could have been disposed of. Certainly, it's bad. And given that we know that there are suspects, we know that they are killers, and they had a lot of time to do whatever they wanted to do because they weren't suspects, even though they should have been, because we now know, we found out 20 years later that there had been an insurance card or something that was left in the driveway of the Freeman's place that I guess must have fallen out of the car or something. And that should have led police eventually to those three guys. They blew it off. Absolutely 100% blew it off. Oh, Molly and Colt, they're buried. Maybe, I'm sorry, D, I misunderstood you. That would be something. Certainly, if Molly and Colt were buried, then that would be something. We'll just have to see. The only thing I would say to that, D, is that's not the impression I got when it came out that remains were found. I don't know. Did anybody say they were digging around or I don't remember that. And that usually, for example, when Janelle Matthews was found, from the very first report, they were digging, found her, of course, by luck. So if they were buried, I think that that would have come out, at least one of the news stories, or would have leaked or something, D. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll keep my eyes peeled for that. So that's with Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman. I have not mentioned them in a while. They were included in an update episode at one point when that one particular guy was charged and went to jail and everything, but there's really been nothing since. It's very sad. Yeah, very sad. All right, let's go to the first topic that is actually in the title for this live show tonight. And I might as well just make it about, let's just get Nancy Guthrie out of the way. As one of my assistants, actually, Emily, told me, what was it, yesterday, it does seem that after all the craziness and her being taken to Mexico and all of this, it does seem that investigators are now eventually circling back right to where she lived, in the neighborhood where she lived. As you know, that has been from the first time that I spoke about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. I made the point about, of course, I think we all know that most crimes, at least in the United States, are between people who know each other. That doesn't mean they like each other or know each other overtly well, but just in general, the victim knows the perpetrator knows the victim. And that's why I thought this could be something that's very personal. Could it be a neighborhood dispute over something? And of course, I used the example of where my dad lives in Pennsylvania and all the craziness that I've heard over the years, even before my mother died, about neighbors not getting along and people putting up, their flag here instead of their American flag there, too many plants, too many bird feeders, on and on and on. And that's just one of the first things that hit me. Like I said, I know it's anecdotal. It's certainly anecdotal. But now they're going back after, of course, all these ransom notes that appear on TMZ. And all these people, saying that it had to do with Savannah Guthrie this guy is from Mexico and it was ransom money and all these things. They're finally, I guess, going back to the neighborhood, going door to door. They probably, again, I'm not saying they didn't do this initially. They certainly did. But it is interesting to me that there's now news that they're doing that again. And Also, what I saw is that they're looking, and I don't know what to make of this, but they found that there was some sort of electrical box that had been damaged. Yeah, it's so weird that we kind of ignore them. If you're going through some suburb community where all the houses like look alike or whatever, you see these little green boxes just sitting there, and for the layperson, does this have to do with the sewage system? Does this have to do? Does this neighborhood have gas? Does it have to do with electric? Does it have to do with the phones? Does it have to do with their TV cable? What are these boxes? Most people don't even know, and I don't even know. But one of those, I guess, was damaged in the area, but I don't think that I'm not at this point, not overtly suspicious about that. I think a lot of vandalism happens across the United States, and being that these boxes are just sitting there, who knows what idiots will do? Kids will do, drunks will do, who knows? So I'm not overtly suspicious of it at this point, but it is notable to me that it took like a month and so many days for anybody to even start talking about that. Maybe some of you have really, really, really been following this 24/7 knew about this. This is new information to me. And then there's an allegation. Well, did the internet go out or around the time that Nancy went missing, and it did knock out a bunch of cameras, and that's why we don't have more video? Well, then I start wondering, well, then why was obviously her camera was working? Now, maybe it's a different system. I don't know. You'd think if they wanted to knock out, if this was something that was on purpose, okay, we want to knock out electricity or the internet in this block because we're going to go do this. You'd think they would have made sure they would have knocked out the camera of the house where they were going, or he was going, if this was just one person. You'd think he could have gotten that right. Instead, I guess they're trying to market this idea. Well, all these other cameras were knocked out and this one wasn't. That seems weird. So is this just something, I realize that, the news is dying down. There have been a lot of people who have gotten, amateur reporters and sensationalists on YouTube, on Reddit, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, name it, that have got a lot of attention going there and, thinking they're Woodward and Bernstein and everything. Well, now they're, the news is kind of dying off. So is this something that is actually real, or is this, are these types of people trying to make sure, they can continue to put out material, so they'll just write anything? And given my particular opinion on the media in the United States, it would not surprise me at all. They're just writing stuff. They're just writing stuff so they can get more clicks and more shares. They are going to beat this disappearance into the ground. Unlike, for example, if I'm going to reference Woodward and Bernstein, and I think most of you know who they are, you're of a certain age. And probably it's on my mind because All the President's Men, the movie, one of my favorite movies. And I continue to say I think the 1970s was the best decade for movies when you start looking at Star Wars, Jaws, All the President's Men, The French Connection, Patton, the Godfather movies, Network, Rocky. It's just a crazy, crazy good decade of movies. If I was stuck on an island and I had to pick a decade for movies, I would pick that decade. But now, what I've gotten, All the President's Men was originally a book. It was a nonfiction book about Bob Woodward and Bernstein, who, were the reporters for the Washington Post, and how they went about reporting on Watergate. And they eventually got most of the credit for bringing the news and everything to the people so they can understand what exactly happened there. What was a book first? I got the book on Audible, and I've been, between listening to some other things, I've been listening to that book. And it's like, I forget how many hours it is. I'm only a little bit into it, but it was the book, and then they turned it into the movie, All the President's Men. And it's really interesting because these were two guys that were looking to find relevant facts and publishing them. And this was a time when, of course, there's no internet or anything else, but they weren't worried about clicks and shares and everything else. They were really, 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 really talking to people, knocking on doors. And, these people who were involved in on Nixon's finance campaign, the committee to reelect the president, they called it CREEP. That's really what they called it. Talking to them, tracking them down, knocking on doors. And it's such a contrast to kind of the way things are done today. And so that's probably on my mind, given that the Nancy Guthrie disappearance is such big news, just like Watergate was. And for me, it's interesting comparing and contrasting how Woodward and Bernstein went about their business, of course, eventually bringing down a president, in contrast to how these people are trying to cover Nancy Guthrie's disappearance 24/7. It's quite a comparison and quite a contrast that's going on here. So that's on my mind. But I do like it if it is true that these investigators are coming back around to what I have thought from the beginning. That this just seemed like something that was within that community. I don't know how far I would want to go in any particular direction to see where the perpetrator came from or how loose or tight the connection is to Nancy. But it just seemed to me seemed like a community thing, that this person felt comfortable there and going up and putting the car wherever or whatever, and just going up and getting in. And it just seemed to me that this is something that was probably scoped out beforehand for some reason. It's either that, or like I also said, was this just some kind of kook that thought Nancy, knew Savannah Guthrie on TV, found out about her mother, decided that Nancy Guthrie is like Satan, and it's like, so one of these tinfoil hat crowd people. It's always seemed to me one or the other. The ransom stuff still does not seem very believable and likely and all that to me, given that the ransom notes, the low quality of them. So I'm going to continue to say this is local and it was personal. What that exactly means, I'm not sure. Like I said, is it a neighborly dispute? Is this a guy that showed up to harm Nancy because Nancy and this guy's mother or father was in a disagreement? Did Nancy Guthrie screw over somebody? Or did she get caught up in something and was going to go to the authorities? Maybe she had some money ripped off from her. She got scammed by somebody, and maybe your daughter didn't know about it, or family didn't know about it, and was going to file small claims court, something like that. And then somebody goes in and does this. This seems more likely than all the other stuff that is out there. So that's my Nancy Guthrie coverage for tonight. Except for knowing that there's been reports that they're back in her community. Really no earth-shattering news over the last week. And in fact, we could even go back maybe 2 weeks now. The last 2 weeks, the way I look at it, it's been pretty quiet. And that could mean, it could be very bad things, meaning, yeah, they're totally out of leads or they have nowhere to go now. Or it could mean that they're really, really, really concentrating on something. And so they don't have to go here, go there, go over and just start pulling people over and sitting them down on the curb and handcuffing them and letting them go. They don't have to do that. They're more focused on now what they think who the perpetrator is and what the cause was and everything, instead of just, once again, driving all over town. So there's two different ways, I think, to look at this. It could be very bad. It could be very good. And but I will continue. There's nothing that I've seen in the last couple weeks, though, to make me think that this is going to end anytime soon. And being that we're in another month, we'll be coming up on how many years since Missy Beaver was murdered? Was that 2017, 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere in there? You know, are we coming up on the 8th year anniversary, 9 years, 10 years, somewhere in there? Everybody thought her murder would be solved in no time. And she, the killer has gotten away with it. And I think that even though Missy Beavers was not famous, I think that her murder is very well known all across the United States. If only, for the video alone, and being murdered in a church. I mean, how many murders happen in a church? So there you go. Moving on, that my most recent Unfound Now, in fact, I didn't write in my notes, but I want to talk about another Unfound Now. But the Unfound Now that just came out 10 days ago was for Petro Cuco. This is a disappearance of a man with dementia or Alzheimer's who went missing. And I talked about that and how I went over there, and I've actually talked to somebody in his family and everything. Interestingly, another person with dementia went missing last week. It must have been on Tuesday. It must have been the day after the last live show. And kind of in the same area, not like right down the street, but kind of over in that direction, kind of over Kathleen saying she is in Largo, kind of over in Kathleen's area. Maybe if Kathleen, you're still in here, even know about that. This woman who had dementia who went missing, and she was actually on a bike. Now, I have to say, what is a person with dementia riding around a bike? Who is letting her do that? Does she not have any caretakers? Does she not live with family? What is going on with that? Of course, we know that there are people out there driving cars around who shouldn't. Of course, we have a disappearance, David Hardy Jr., who had gotten lost multiple times, and his family had to go find him, and then they went to find him again, and then he couldn't follow his son home, and the car was eventually found. David is still missing. I don't know what goes on in those types of situations, that people just allow these people to do these things. With Petro, we know that it was just an oversight. I don't think that he certainly wasn't allowed to be out there. But when you hear about a woman going out with a bike, this sounds like something she was doing, being allowed to do with permission or whatever else. Knowing that she had this mental affliction doesn't seem like the smartest thing in the world. Well, she was found, and she was found alive. But it did take a couple days, but she wasn't far away. And so we can kind of compare and contrast between Petro's disappearance and hers, being that they're kind of from the same area, same kind of situations, both suffering from the same ailment. Of course, Petro didn't have a bike, but I know when I read about it, and I did read about it before she was found, I was still, even though she had a bike, I was still under the same idea. She's probably, I didn't know if she was going to be found alive or not, but I said, she's not going to be that far away. And she wasn't. I don't know exactly how far away she was, but she wasn't that far away. Certainly in an area that made sense to be searched. Hello, fishing. What's going on? Good to see you tonight. I think you meant to write hey instead of J there, but that's pretty funny. So thankfully she was found. She, I think, and her bike were found. And this is usually how these types of disappearances go. That person usually walks off. They're found within a couple days. Yes, sometimes they are deceased. A lot of times they're alive. And there's a lot of, factors that go into that. Did they have any, besides their mind, did they have any physical ailments? Did they have pneumonia? Did they have cancer? Did they have this? Did they have that? And I guess at least for this woman, she must have been in fairly good physical condition. But even with Petro, I think he was obviously in decent physical condition too, being that he was walking around the parking lot of his apartment complex. So I still believe that Petro is in that immediate area, driving around down there, looking at a Google satellite view for the Unfound Now episode. But the odds of him being alive, not very good. So I didn't write the woman's name down here, but if you were to Google like Largo, Florida, Pinellas Park, Florida, about a woman, an older woman who went missing recently, you can find it, and you will find out that she was, found alive. Of course, given these people who have these ailments, of course, they can't explain why they did what they did and why they chose to do that. And of course, some of them don't even technically realize that they were missing. It's very difficult. I know that, I won't mention any names, but there's a woman who is on one of my trivia teams whose husband has, I don't know if it's technically dementia. I don't know if it's technically Alzheimer's, but, his memory is gone. And he had broken a bone some weeks ago. He didn't even realize that he did it. He didn't even remember doing it. It's very difficult. I just can't imagine being in a situation like that, knowing somebody and then seeing them slowly lose their mind. As you all know, my dad's 89. That's not happened to him. Did not happen to my mother, too. Of course, she died from an autoimmune disease. She had her mind right to the end. But, none of my grandparents had that issue. One of my great aunts did, but yeah, and the fact is there's a certain amount of the population that's going to have that happen. Here we are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. Our brains are working fine. We're talking about people who have these ailments, and it will be some of these somewhere down the road, if people live long enough, these people who are talking about other people that, here we are, young people talking about people who has Alzheimer's and dementia. Those people are talking about it now. Some of them will eventually have it. It's very sad. Very sad. Ashley, hello, Ashley. Hi, totally unrelatable, but did you see where two Mirans were found? And Ashley, I've been talking about that for like 3 weeks now, Ashley. I appreciate it. I just mentioned them earlier, and I've done long dissertations on that so far, Ashley. Yes, I would go. You obviously are a non-member. I would go, being that I see her on Facebook, you should go to the Unfound Podcast discussion group and become a member there. In fact, I was just talking about Molly and Colt about 15 minutes ago. So that's regarding this dementia sufferer, but this is usually how these disappearances go. I can't think of one off the top of my head where the person was found miles and miles and miles and miles and miles away. Not one. So that's why when Sister Petro is close, even with Unfound's own disappearance of David Hardy Jr., he is, even though it's been years since he went missing, I still believe that he and his remains are close. So, because that's usually how these disappearances go. Moving on, let's get to, I'm going to do Robert Harrod last. I'm going to take a look at, I'm just calling it Air Force Guy Missing. And as I stated when we started tonight, it's got a lot of attention because this guy, his name is William Neal McCaslin, seemingly had something to do with, the recent, maybe the last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years of Air Force kind of getting back into looking at unidentified flying objects. And many of you have seen these videos of, once again, things that can't be explained, from radar blips and all of that. Might have been involved in that, looking into that. And now he is missing. And of course, the UFO community and everything, this is just, given all of the fuel more to throw on their fire. So I'm going to take a look at this disappearance. Air Force guy missing on Friday. So this is going back, not this past Friday, not 3 days ago, but like a week and 3 days ago. On Friday, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office issued a silver alert for retired Major General William Neal McCaslin, 68 years old, who was last seen about 11 a.m. Friday. So that would have been March. And let me see here. So today is the 9th, A7, 6th. So maybe it was, no, I don't think it was this past Friday. Anyway, on Friday, 11 a.m. Friday, in the area of Quail Run Court Northeast, it is unknown what he was wearing or where he was heading to. McCaslin is 5'11", 160 pounds, with blue eyes, gray hair. Due to his medical issues, law enforcement is concerned for his safety. On Sunday afternoon, Aragon said New Mexico Search and Rescue was assisting in the investigation. Neal McCaslin is a former commander of Kirkland's Phillips Research Site and Air Force Research Laboratory, as well as a Kirtland Partnership Committee board member. We are coordinating closely with local authorities and defer all updates regarding the search efforts to the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, said Colonel Justin Seacrest, base commander of the 377th Air Base Wing at Kirtland. Our thoughts are with his family during this difficult time. There's not a lot of details. D says, hey, Ed, we also have 3 sets of remains in Missouri. Yeah, that's going to have to wait till another time, D. You can, things like that, just send that privately to me. So we don't have a lot of details on this. Even on Web Sleuths, other places, it's just like he was there and then he wasn't there. It doesn't have any news on who was last to see him. Did he say he was going anywhere? What was his demeanor at the time? Did he usually take walks at 11 a.m.? I got nothing. So it's a little tough. But, of course, the bad news, I would say, my opinion, is that he left his phone behind. You don't need to be a missing persons expert to know that that is bad news. Especially, of course, today. And it's been like that way. It's been that way for years. That somebody goes out, whether they're in their car or on their bike or their motorcycle or their boat, or maybe they're a pilot. People who leave their phones behind, it's usually not by accident. Phones are a part of our lives. I know even for me, maybe for the rest of you kind of almost feel naked when you go, you go somewhere without it. And why you would do that, I don't know. Valerie says Bernalillo. Bernalillo. Thank you. Somebody trying to make sure I say the name correct. Valerie, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Bernalillo. All right, very good. Bernalillo County in New Mexico. Yeah, this is where this has happened. And I don't know why, but suddenly I got some sinus stuff going on. I don't even know what this is. But he left his phone behind. Now, his wife has posted a statement on Facebook, and I'm going to read it to you now. The wife's statement is, I would like to take this opportunity to dispel some of the misinformation circulating about Neil and his disappearance, mostly from uninformed media sources. Oh, really? We have uninformed media sources here in the United States? You don't say. Number one, the initial silver alert from the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office mentioned medical conditions, which some have taken to mean Alzheimer's. Neil is at some risk, but not from dementia. He was not confused and disoriented, or I guess disoriented. He was not confused and disoriented. That's number one. Number two, there was no concerning Friday morning telephone call to a close relative. I guess somebody put that out there. News to me. I have been in contact with all of his close relatives and some not so close ones. This is a complete fabrication. So there must have been a story out there somewhere saying he called somebody in distress state. She's saying that did not happen. Number three, it is true that when Neil was in the Air Force, he had access to some highly classified programs and information. He retired from the Air Force almost 13 years ago and has had only very commonly held clearances since. It seems quite unlikely that he was taken to extract very dated secrets from him. So I guess could he have been taken due to what he knew about UFOs and stuff? Like I said, crazy. And then number four, Valerie says it's in the county Albuquerque is. And thank you. Valerie giving us a geography lesson of New Mexico. I need that. So thank you, Valerie, and love your channel. Valerie, you're very kind. Thank you so much. And thank you for correcting my pronunciation. And number four, it is true that Neil had a brief association with the UFO community through Tom DeLonge, former frontman of Blink 182. I don't think he was the frontman. Tom DeLonge was not the singer, right? I met them, by the way. I met the members of Blink 182 in 2000 when they were, big. And I was a production assistant on some sort of MTV production in Las Vegas. And they were hosting some spring break show or something. And so it was almost like exactly 26 years ago now. Man, I'm old. And I met them. Not a big Blink 182 fan. So, but I don't think Tom wasn't it Mark? Mark somebody, isn't he the lead singer, the front man of them? And he had cancer, I think, at one time. But Tom DeLonge, I think, was like guitar player, drummer or something. And founder of the organization To the Stars. He's this guy who's been working with somebody within government about UFOs. Neil worked with Tom for a bit shortly after his Air Force retirement as an unpaid, Neil's choice, consultant on military and technical scientific matters to lend did she really write this word? To lend verisimilitude. And I can't pronounce it. If I thought that county name was tough, man, this word, I know the word, but I mean, who writes it? To Tom's fiction book and media activities. By the word is verisimilitude. Verisimilitude. Is there not an easier word she could have used? To Tom's fiction book and media activities. After the Russians hacked John Podesta's emails, there was less contact with Tom and the community pushing for release of UFO information. This connection is not a reason for someone to abduct Neil. Neil does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from Roswell crash, stored Wright Pratt. Though at this point, with absolutely no sign of him, maybe the best hypothesis is that aliens beamed him up to the mothership. I can't believe can you believe the wife of somebody would write that. It seems a little weird, doesn't it? Maybe she's just writing that out of frustration. Of course, once again, when it comes to trauma and everything, people say and do things that we wouldn't normally expect of them. So I'm willing to give her some latitude, but this is really, really, really dark humor. But this connection is not a reason for someone to adapt. Neil does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash stored at Wright Pratt. Though at this point, with absolutely no sign of him, maybe the best hypothesis is that aliens beamed him up to the mothership. However, no sightings of a mothership hovering above the Sandia Mountains have been reported. That is, well, Maureen, she's certainly being sarcastic. Certainly. But in 10 years, almost 10 years of doing the podcast and talking to a lot of people like her, not a lot of joking goes on. So I get the sarcasm. It's just, your husband may be deceased. It just, but so that is the wife's statement. And Amy's telling Mark Hoppus, right? Thank you, Amy. Mark Hoppus is the lead singer for Blink 182. If you don't know who they are, they did that song, All the Small Things. Not really my type of music, even back then. I was there as a production assistant, not because they were there. So, what to think of all of this? The UFO kook community just can't help themselves. It's disgusting. And it would not surprise me at all if she's talking, of course she's, obviously responding to some things that probably have been put on Reddit and who knows where else. About the Alzheimer's, about this call to a close relative that seemingly didn't happen. This is no different than the Nancy Guthrie stuff. People just making stuff up because, man, I really, 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 really want the clicks and shares today. I need them. So I have to write something. So people just lie their butts off. Lie. And especially when it comes to UFOs. And like I continue to say, I look at you should know, all these sightings and everything. I don't believe these are aliens from another planet. I don't believe they're aliens on the United States, on the Earth that are hiding from us and all that. Just is all insane to me. And my problem is I think most of these people in the UFO community know that. But because they can't get attention for doing or saying anything else, well, we'll just stick with this. It's no different than people in the flat earth community. At this point, if you're in the flat earth community and everything else, you're doing it just to get the attention. You're just doing it to be different. You're just doing it to be provocative, on and on and on and on and on. This is the way I look at the UFO community. Even though I know how big the universe is and all that stuff, when I look at UFOs in the US, I'll just speak as an American. We know how inept the federal government is at so many things. Pick one. The waste and the corruption and all of this stuff. To think that they successfully or just leak things and everything else. I think everybody's given them too much dang credit for this. Leaks are, of course, we had Aldrich Ames. We had the Hansen guy. We have had spies all over the United States government going back to the 1940s, successfully getting out real information, giving it to the Chinese, giving it to the Soviet Union or the Russians, giving them to North Korea, on and on and on. We know of all these hacks that have happened within the United States from, once again, countries that don't like us so much. And not one piece of believable information regarding UFOs is out there. And even we have people who say they saw UFOs and then years later, oh yeah, we made that up. I was on drugs. I was drunk, on and on and on. I think we give the federal government in the United States way, way, way too much credit for this stuff. And like I said, I think that it's just these people, they need something to talk about. I would compare this to, the smiley face killer hoax. It's the same thing. The people that talk about it to this day, even though it's kind of, I guess, really, really died down, at least my impression being that I do this. I think the only reason it carries on is because people just need something to talk about, not because they actually believe it. There is a difference. People can talk about things and not believe things, in contrast to just because somebody talks about something doesn't mean that person actually believes it. They might just be lonely. They just want to be provocative. They just want to be a contrarian. You just can never tell. People are like that. So regarding this guy, and I have it, this UFO stuff cuts both ways. For example, going back to the smiley face killer point that I've made for many years now, people who want to push that theory, all it does is keeps us away from solving the real problem, which is too many college-age kids drinking to excess. If you want to stop young people from ending up in rivers, you know what you do? You start a better don't drink campaign. Now, the good news is, at least in the United States, alcohol consumption is way down. Of course, other things are up, weed and everything else. You want to make the smiley face killer hoax completely go away? It'll be amazing if people, young people don't drink as much anymore, don't smoke weed, do all these other things. And it's amazing how the number of young people ending up in rivers will greatly plummet. There is certainly correlation and causation between those things. Pushing a hoax only serves to hurt young people. So when it comes to this, it's kind of the same thing. Granted, there aren't a lot of facts on this, as I've already stated. We don't know who last saw him. We don't know if he regularly went for walks. We don't know. To me, it sounds like some sort of mental health crisis. To me, especially given that his phone was left behind. But in believing that UFO people took him, what does it do? It only serves to cover up the point that, we have a mental health crisis in the United States. And a lot of people are doing this. People that have no connections to UFOs or any sort of conspiracy theory, who are depressed, they're paranoid schizophrenics, they don't want to take their medication, they're bipolar and they don't want to get treatment. All it does is cover all that stuff up, just because a bunch of UFO kooks need to have their way. And other conspiracy theorists, whether it has to do with the shooting of JFK or Jeffrey Epstein or whatever else, it just serves those people. We don't get to the real problems. I hate it. Like I said, he disappeared because, the UFO people, he disappeared too much because he knew too much, or he disappeared because he knew too little for all of you UFO kooks. It cuts both ways. And what I mean by that is, okay, somebody kidnapped him because he knew a lot about UFOs, or maybe somebody kidnapped him because because he didn't know anything about UFOs, but somebody decided to kidnap him anyway. This is what I mean. You can go in all sorts of directions. And of course, I don't believe any of this. Any of it. Let me see here. Christina, I agree. While there are many don't drink and drive campaigns, the dangers go beyond that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Christine. Christina, thank you for bringing that. We're so caught up in people not drinking and driving. A lot of people are killing themselves drinking and walking too. Thank you, Christina. Great point. Thank you. But these UFO people, yeah, somebody walked off. He knew too much. Somebody got to him, or he didn't know enough. Somebody was trying to get information out of him, and he said he didn't know anything, and somebody took it out on him. It's all horrible. And I have it in my notes here. This is the downside of continuing to believe in things where there is no proof, and instead, people harass others because of it anyway. This is why, when it comes, we're going to release more JFK info. And, there are people out there, well, this will finally solve the mystery. No, it won't. Too many people are invested in it being a mystery and wanting the conspiracy to continue and want the controversy and everything. There's no amount of information that is ever going to be released on the JFK assassination or any other conspiracy that is ever going to shut any of these conspiracy people up, ever. They need it. Don't you see this as a psychosis? And I go on here. How would you feel if people continue to claim you know something when you do not? Maybe this is what happened to this guy. They know he's involved in UFOs. People may be writing stuff about him. Maybe he's getting emails. We know you know stuff about UFOs. We know you know, and you won't talk. You deserve to tell the American people the truth. How would you like getting that for about 10 years in your email? Do you think that might cause you to have a mental health issue? Nobody would be surprised if you did, if you got one. If you knew that you were being honest, but all these kooks all over the place continue to think, yeah, you're part of one of the conspiracy when you know you're not. Do you think that would make you nuts? I think it would. And these people are more than happy to do it for their own reasons. They don't care. They are horrible, horrible, horrible people. Marian, cyberbullying. Exactly. We should never just think that cyberbullying can only happen to 15-year-olds. It can happen to 60-some-year-olds too. So this is also on my mind. As I think about this, if we were to look, let's say we were to look at this man's emails and see these things, everything that all the people he has blocked, everything going to a spam folder and everything else, would we be surprised by that? I don't think we would. I'm guessing probably at some point he said, why did I ever get involved in any of this UFO stuff? And in the first place, he might have just been assigned it. You're in the military, you got to do what they say. He might have just been assigned it. Probably not, maybe even guessing, the crap, sandwich that he would have to eat regarding all of this. Maybe that's why he walked off without his phone. I, of course, hope he's still alive. I'm hoping he's just lost out there. I'm hoping that maybe he slipped and fell and broke his leg and he's managed to stay alive all these days, maybe with his Air Force training or something like that. I'm hoping. But if you're also going to tell me he walked off because he was having a mental health crisis because a bunch of UFO people wouldn't leave him alone, I could believe that easily. and I have it written here, the irony, none of these kooks are ever in positions to know anything the rest of us don't because they're all losers. That's what I have written here. That's word for word. The irony, none of these kooks are ever in positions to know anything the rest of us don't because they're all losers. They're all into UFOs, but you couldn't trust them with anything. Even if it was true. And there was some UFO, in the private community. Would you ever trust that person with anything? Never. Like I said, when it comes to the smiley face killer stuff, when it comes to UFOs and some of these other things that, of course, you've heard me go off on like all the Israel Keys stuff. Israel Keys killed Susie Lyle. He killed this person. He caused this disappearance. All these, I'm kind of in the same boat with that as well. People just want to believe what they want to believe because they need something to talk about. It's interesting to them. There's no facts to it. There's not even any statistical analysis of it. It's nothing. But they will bother the crap out of anybody because they believe it with nothing to back it up. So I feel sorry. Although I will say this part 4 of the wives' statement is unique to me, but as you know, I tend to give these people a lot of latitude when it comes to trauma and never suspecting that this would happen to this guy and everything. But I certainly hope that retired Major General William Neal McCaslin is, I hope this is alive. Maybe he just needs some time to blow off, or who knows. But all of us in here, if you're tuning in on this Monday night, disappearances, you follow Unfound very closely. We know this kind of disappearance, and it rarely resolves in a good way. And the result is rarely good. All right, let's go to Bob Harrod. Robert Harrod, Harrod. And like I said, I think I picked this one out because it kind of reminds me of my dad and other things, a lot of different things. And like I said, there has been a couple podcasts out there that have covered his disappearance. Of course, Unfound has not done so. I don't think I even knew about this disappearance until the last couple of days when I started looking for a disappearance to talk about tonight. So I've certainly never reached out to anyone in his family. So I have no inside knowledge. All right, I'm going to read to you some of the Charlie Project rundown. I will do the questions that I would ask, questions that are on my mind, and then I will do some analysis. And this is one where foul play is, I would say, just probable. Bob Harrod was last seen at his residence in the 500 block of Carnation Drive, Placentia, California, sometime between 11 a.m. and noon on July 27th, 2009. I think that time frame might be a little off. He and his son-in-law were getting Harrod's new wife's arrival that day. I'll get into that in a moment. His son-in-law went to the store. I think it was a Home Depot. And when he returned, he found the housekeeper locked out and waiting on the porch of the house, and Bob was missing. So the son-in-law and Bob are at home, allegedly. Son-in-law leaves. While he's gone, the housekeeper shows up, but by the time she gets there, the house is locked. Bob isn't there. She's waiting there. The son-in-law comes back. She's like, I can't get in. The son-in-law gets in, and of course they go inside, and Bob is not there. Bob's wallet and keys disappeared with him, but he left behind his 1997 Toyota Camry and his eyeglasses. So his only car was there. You should know that I looked up this address, or the general address of 500 Carnation Drive, 500 block of Carnation Drive. It is suburban as suburban can be. Houses in all directions, no bodies of water, no woods, nothing, if you're wondering. Bob went missing on July 27th, but he had actually gotten married for a second time. Now, you should know Bob is like 80 some years old. It's like 81 or something. He got married on June 29th, a month before this. And his new wife, Fontel, was about to move in with him, but he vanished before she arrived. The couple had met and become engaged in 1950. But they were separated when Harrod joined the military, and eventually both of them married other people. They reconnected by telephone after their spouses died, and then met in person and decided to get married only 6 days later. The new wife was packing up her belongings at her home in Missouri, so she was in Missouri when he went missing. And Bob, with help from his one son-in-law, was preparing for her arrival and was looking forward to it because I think probably had lived by himself for so long, maybe the house needed maybe a little more upkeep. Although Bob lived modestly and drove an older model car, Bob was worth approximately $5 million. Before he got involved with this new wife, though, he had been seeing a younger woman. I don't know if he had been dating her, but she cut his hair. They're just calling her his barber. And over the years since Bob's previous wife had died, he had lent this woman $86,000 or gave it to her over 9 months. All right, so there's that. And she was much younger than him, in her 40s, and she was married. After his second marriage, Bob had allegedly asked to be repaid. I'll get into that in the analysis. It isn't clear whether this woman or the debt had anything to do with his disappearance. Bob had planned to put Fontel, his new wife's name, on some of his assets, including some of his properties, but he disappeared before he could do that. A week and a half after he went missing, 2 of his children, he had 3 daughters, filed for conservatorship to get control of his assets. They wanted to put up a reward for a safe return, maintain his home, and pay his bills. The new wife contested the conservatorship application. She actually moved into the house where he went missing from and changed the locks. In 2014, so 5 years after he went missing, Bob's family successfully declared him legally dead and were able to kick his new wife out of that house. Authorities don't believe Harrod was harmed by a stranger. He had no known medical issues. When he disappeared, although he did have some short-term memory problems, like being unable to remember phone numbers. I mean, who remembers phone numbers anymore? His family doesn't believe he would have left without warning. There has been no activity on Harrod's bank accounts or credit cards since he went missing. His hobbies included fishing and playing slot machines, and left behind 3 daughters, a grandson, and 3 great-grandchildren. His case remains unsolved and is classified as a possible homicide. So here are some additional facts that you need to know about this disappearance. Once again, Bob is in his early 80s, secretly wealthy. He had given this money, like I said, $86,000. It's not clear that it was a loan. His daughters say that it was a loan, but you should know something. Because of issues between themselves and their father, Bob, the daughters had not talked to Bob in 6 months. They were a little bit estranged. But the day before or 2 days before he went missing, he actually got together with his daughters and their husbands, and there was an argument about money. Even though they had not talked to him in a while and everything, there was something going on, and something concerning money. And I think what happened was that they found out somehow that he had given money to this woman, and they actually had somebody from the local government or some adult, elderly care office go to check him out to see if Bob could actually take care of himself anymore. And like I said, this is very similar to me. My dad's still very able. And I'm hoping we don't ever have to get to that one day with my dad. But and I stay out of my dad's financial situation. It seems like he his daughters were really bothered by him giving this woman $86,000. He was worth $5 million. I don't know what that percentage comes out to. $86,000 for a guy worth $5 million is not a lot of money. But you should know the attitude I take with my dad is, it's his money. I'm his only heir. I appreciate that. That's all great. But really, I don't really ask my dad about his money situation. I don't ask for money from him. In fact, I've turned down more money from him than I've accepted. It's not even close. So that, like I said, this is really something with, in my mind. He didn't own a cell phone, so no help there. Now his son-in-law, who was with him that day, of course, the husband of one of the daughters, actually left the house multiple times. One time he went to a convenience store, and then the 2 other times he went to like the Home Depot. So he goes to the convenience store, comes back, goes to the Home Depot, gets something, and then goes back to the Home Depot again. And seemingly he had receipts for those occasions. And I think the police even checked the video. And yes, he was there. And the time seemingly that Bob went missing, the son-in-law was only gone for like a half hour. The time that he says that, yeah, Bob was there. And then when I came back, he wasn't there. And the timeline is fairly solid because Fontel, his new wife, had actually spoken to him that morning. In fact, she was not the only person who spoke to him that morning. So it's not like he disappeared the night before, like the daughters or the son-in-law or this woman who got the $86,000, made him disappear, and they all got together to concoct some story. It does seem that on the morning of his disappearance, people who are believable, like Fontel, talked to him. So it's a very, very complex situation. So just to line this all up, we have a woman who got $86,000 from him. Probably knew that he got married again, which probably she knew that meant there would be no more money coming her way. We have these daughters who were already arguing about money, had already started to worry that their father couldn't take care of his money anymore. They didn't like that he was putting his new wife's name on like the house and some of these other things, even though he had already drawn up a trust for his daughters, and the new wife was not part of any of that. So it seems to me that the daughters were going to, get what they were supposed to get anyway. It seems. I'm not an inheritance lawyer, of course, but it does seem that there was a lot of money issues. A lot of people wanted stuff from Bob. And it very well could be, at least to his daughters, he was worth more dead than alive. But that's not unusual. You get to a point in your life, even like with myself, I'm my dad's only heir. And yes, he has a house, he has investments and everything. I'm the executor of his will. Yes, he's worth some money. Yeah, but that's not unusual. I mean, a lot of people they've had jobs, they've invested. That'd be the situation for anybody in their 40s or 50s, and they have parents who have managed money well and everything. I mean, yeah, that's the way it goes. That's not unusual. But there were disagreements. And not only do we have 3 daughters, but I think that they had husbands, and one of them at least had a grandson. So a lot to think about. So we have an 80-year-old in the middle of a suburban community. If you were to look at it, could not have walked away. This is not a like a Bowman situation in Santa Monica. He's 80 some years old, not in horrible condition, but really, where is he going? There's no proof that he ever called for a taxi, and his wallet and keys are missing. So this would seem to rule out an abduction. Like once the son-in-law left, somebody shows up, knocks on the door, and takes him. That seems unlikely. What the housekeeper also said is that when she would get there, like there were times when she would get there to clean his house and he wouldn't be there, he would leave a spare key in the mailbox. Spare key was not in the mailbox. It should also be known that this was a Monday that this happened, and she usually came on Tuesdays. So she's there like on the wrong day, but this was something that she and Bob had worked out, that she would come a day early for some reason. So what are we to think of this? So here are some additional questions that are on my mind regarding the disappearance of Robert Harrod from Placentia, California. Remember, this disappearance that's 17 years old. I'd want to know more about how this barber got this $86,000. Was he giving her cash? Were these checks? How did it start? What's her background? What exactly was going on here? And they also mentioned not only did that happen, but when his first wife died, Bob actually brought this barber, this woman, 40 years old, to the funeral. They had some ceremony. He actually took her to the funeral. And I forget what year his wife died. But so could there have been something romantic going on? I guess if you're 80 some years old and some 40-year-old is taking an interest in you for whatever reason, I guess it's nice work if you can get it, I guess. But I'd need to know a lot more, and those other podcasts and reading about it, it's not very clear about where was this money going, what was going on here. But it's not clear to me that this was actually what we would call a loan. His daughters claim it was a loan. I don't think the woman who was receiving the money thought it was a loan. And I don't think Bob ever said it was a loan. It might have well just been a gift. I mean, really, you're giving $86,000 to somebody. You really think they're going to pay it back? It was probably a gift. He probably felt happy doing it. It's his money. I realize it's suspicious and everything, but we have to remember his money, and he was not hurting for money. So I need to know more about that, though, just in case. Did this woman, and if she was married, did she ever come over to the house? Did she ever come over, hang out, stay the night? What do we know about, and I think they said her name. I'm not going to say it here. Did she ever come over to the house? Was it common? What did the neighbors see? How often was she over there during this time between her, his wife dying and then him hooking up with this new woman? How often was this woman ever over there? Was she over there at all? And once again, was this sexual? I think we have to be open to the idea that it might have been. The son-in-law, what is his story? His name is mentioned. I think his name is Jeff Michaels, which sounds like it sounds like a porn name or something. What is his story? How did he and Bob get along? Which daughter was he married to? Did he help Bob out a lot over the years? Does he have a criminal record? Does he have any money issues? Does he have does he have a temper? You need to know a lot more about this guy, because we have to look at it this way. What are the odds that Bob goes missing when the son-in-law isn't there? We know, with other disappearances that have been like this, we know what we usually think regarding these types of disappearances. Husband leaves. He says his wife's at home. He goes out for an hour. He comes back. She's gone. He doesn't know what happened to her. What do we usually think? That's a crap story. But it does seem that the son-in-law could prove that he did go to these places. Still, I don't think that rules him out. But we have to think about it this way. If somebody did come over to the house, somebody that Bob knew, and said, hey, Bob, let's go for a ride, what are the odds that the son-in-law just happens to not be there when this happens? It could lead you to believe that somebody was watching the house. Maybe. We have to realize that the housekeeper was there too. So that even cuts down the timeline even more, maybe down to 15 minutes. So there's that. Want to know more from the neighbors. In fact, this is, to me, this is the huge part that's missing from the coverage. There's nothing about the neighbors. Of course, we have to remember it's a Monday. It was like midday, maybe a lot of them working. I don't know how many of them would have even been home. But still, I'd want to hear from them. Oh, yeah, well, we weren't home. I wasn't home. That to me is important. I'd want to know more about that. And then what about the new wife's family? Does she have any kids? Did she have any people who lived in the area? But I have to admit, it seems unlikely that anybody in her family, I mean, they were getting married. She was moving in with him. He's worth $5 million. He's going to be taking care of her. On and on and on. I mean, what are we doing here? Why would her family harm him at all? So, but maybe just want to check it out. Maybe. And being that he finally was declared deceased, and I guess these daughters finally got their money. What have these people done with their lives since? Not just this son-in-law who was there that day, but the rest of the daughters and their husbands. Have they stayed married? Have they had any money problems? Any addictions pop up? Any felony issues? Certainly would want to know what has gone on with all of them since 2009. Charlotte, let me see what you're saying here. That was a really interesting case. I saw it on Disappeared years ago. I've always wondered if someone in the family did something to him. Well, could be. Wasn't Bob new love a woman? He had been in a relationship. Yeah, I read that earlier back in 1950. Yes, I read that. Right. And they got reacquainted later, right? Weren't his kids upset about that? Yep. That's everything that I've said here, Charlotte. You are correct. Yes. His daughters were not happy that he was getting married again. And I think it was simply from a position of worrying about, are they going to get their stuff? Are they going to get their inheritance whenever he dies, whether it's next year or 10 years from now? Yes. But I can't say that's overtly unusual. But of course, Bob's the one that's gone missing. So what are my insights into this disappearance? Like I've already said, I'm not suspicious of his new wife. Obviously, I mean, what'd she do? Kill him? She was in Missouri. Obviously, there's solid proof of that. It might be worth an hour just to hear about her family. Was anybody jealous that, she met a new guy and got married? Did they think it was too rushed? Were they mad at him or for some really, I guess. But to me, of all possible scenarios, this is like the least likely one. I don't find it unusual that she changed the locks. It's her house. The paperwork says she's allowed to live there, at least for that time. And she had a right to get new locks. Who knew who had keys? And of course, she knew that her new husband went missing. It could be somebody out there who took him, then had a key to the house. Totally understandable, not suspicious to me at all that she went and lived at the house. She was married to him. She had every right to be in that house. Like, I know she got, eventually got kicked out. And that, I don't know what the law is regarding that. But at least at the time, in my opinion, she had every right to be there, even if the daughters were all ticked off. I obviously the court eventually ruled for the kids and they were able to kick her out. Why that is and legalities of that and how that all works, I don't know. Sticks out to me, goes missing within a half-hour window, maybe. It leaves you with the impression that somebody was watching the house or something else. And if we're to think that the son-in-law didn't do it, the issue is that nobody could have known that the son-in-law would be gone during that third time that he left. Nobody would have known that except Bob and the son-in-law. And he went to Home Depot, got something for a toilet. Nobody would have known that. So if somebody did show up in the meantime, how did that happen? Was somebody watching down the street, waiting for the son-in-law to leave? Somebody with a lot of time on his or her hands? No. As I've already stated, the barber and her husband, is it true they were expected to pay him back? I know what his daughters say. It seems unlikely to me. Is there any paperwork? Did Bob actually say that? Did he ever write that down? Did he tell anybody that anybody trusts regarding this? I would not believe his daughters regarding that because they wanted the money too much. I doubt that it was a loan. There were allegations of elder financial abuse. I think that it because of the daughters finding out that he gave all that money to the barber. I can't exactly overtly blame them, but it's his money. Like I've already stated, days before there was a heated talk about money and the new wife. Is that a coincidence? Isn't it? What I will say is this. He had 3 daughters. And if you want to think that this was a family disappearance, for all 3 daughters to be in league to do this seems very, very unlikely. And what I also think is that let's just say you have one bad seed daughter. Let's just say that you have one bad seed daughter. Remember, everything's going to be split 3 ways anyway. Is she really going to do this like with her husband or whoever? And to benefit herself and her 2 sisters? Is she really going to chance getting a murder charge just so she can help herself and her sisters? But it seems unlikely. It kind of does. Why am I taking the risk here when my sisters are also, who aren't going to be involved in this at all, they're going to benefit too? Why would somebody do that? Likewise, though, it seems unlikely that you could get 3 sisters to agree to do this, or even 2 of them. Because once again, I think it's going to be the same thing. 2 sisters are going to chance murder charges, and then the remaining daughter gets it all if they get caught. It seems unlikely. And I mean, how do you even bring that up? If you have, I have siblings, how do you even bring that up? Yeah, I think we should kill dad. Because here's what can happen. You all 3 get together and then one backs out and goes to the police and sets the other 2 up. And guess what? That one, the one who didn't take part, gets all the inheritance and the other 2 go to jail. So it just seems unlikely. The barber and her husband had alibis seemingly for that day. However, 2 people were charged with something regarding Bob's disappearance years later, and those charges were dropped. The rumor out there is that it was the barber and her husband, but the charges didn't stick. people can be desperate for money. Was the big question I have is this. We know about the daughters wanting his money. We know about the hairdresser, beautician getting $86,000. I think there's a very good chance that he might have given money to other people too that were unknown. I think there's a very good chance of that. So that's something to think about. Was there anybody else who was a beneficiary of Bob besides his daughters? It doesn't sound like it, but was maybe somebody promised something? And I continue to say that the timeline is so tight regarding this. Now, there's some other things, and I'm running out of time here. The housekeeper said when she went inside and went up to the bedroom, Bob's bed was unmade. And she goes, that's the first time that she could remember ever that being so. He was always a guy who got up, made his bed, was very neat and everything. She found it very unusual that the bed was unmade. Of course, the problem is she'd spoke to him that day. So did he get up and not make it? I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know if that means anything or not. But the way I would analyze, the main thing that I don't like is the timeline is just a little too tight for me to believe this was some sort of coincidence, that the son-in-law leaves and that's when it happened. That's where I am. That is not the conclusion that one of the podcasters who covered this came to. I could see a situation where, there's no question there was an argument about money. And sounds a bit like Nancy Guthrie. Yeah. But, Nancy didn't leave with her purse, though. At least not to my knowledge. And so I think there's only one solid theory. Unless Bob walked off, he walked to somebody else's house and something happened there. Is it worth still going back and going door to door? Yes. I'd want to know more about what the neighbors knew about Bob. But what I could see is that there's this heated argument. There's this heated family thing about money. And then the son-in-law comes over maybe the next day. The argument starts again. Don't you know what your daughters and my wife and something gets out of hand? That would be my guess. I can't see why the beautician or husband would do it. He still could have given the money. Even though he was getting married, he still could have given the money. Why kill him? And I don't believe that they were going to pay him back. I think if this would have gone to court, they could have made a very, very good argument. He gave this money out of the kindness of his heart. He took me to his wife's funeral. We're very close, on and on and on. There's no paperwork regarding a loan. There's no reason to kill him because if he was going to be a loan, I think they could have made a real good argument that it was a gift. I think something got out of hand at the house that day. And the argument that had started the day before, 2 days before about money continued with Bob and the one particular son-in-law. I don't believe that my theory would be that this was not planned. This is something that got out of hand. Bob got angry. The son-in-law got angry. There was something that went down and there was a death by accident, and we know what went on from there. And it didn't happen maybe when the housekeeper showed up. It probably happened earlier that day. And it very well could be that when the son-in-law was going out those times, he was actually taking Bob's body away. That's my theory. That's my best guess for the disappearance of Bob Harrod. Once again, simply because you just know these disappearances, and I don't like it when you have these very, very small time frames in which something could have happened, you have to start looking at other choices. So there you go. That is the disappearance of Bob Harrod. Like I said, there are a couple other, there might be some YouTube shows about his disappearance as well. And as Charlotte mentioned, there's a disappeared episode. As for this Friday, I was supposed to do an interview tomorrow. Unfortunately, the woman's daughter is sick, so not sure we're doing this Friday. But that might be part of a bigger discussion that I will have next week with all of you, because I'm going to get deeper into how I'm going to be cutting back on my podcast work, because I want to devote more time to other disappearance stuff, including my consulting and stuff. But we'll talk about that next week. I'll give you a week to think about that, but I kind of warned you like 2 months ago that was going to be happening. Just other things I want to do with disappearances, and I'm going to have to cut back on time on some of the other things that I'm doing. But like I said, I'll still be around. But like I said, I'll get deeper into that next week. But that's all I have for you tonight. Not sure what's going to happen this Friday. I'll figure something out for all of you. And thank you for watching and listening. Please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. And we'll certainly do another Unfound Live next Monday. Happy birthday to you, Lisa. Keep your heads on swivels out there. Charlie, say hi to your sons for me, especially the 18-year-old. Good night.